I'm glad the phone worked, Ellen.
Welcome everyone to today's webinar on Boost Your Brain and Memory Program. We have some very experienced presenters with us today. I'm Jody Craner. I work with the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute. I'd like to do introductions of our esteemed presenters. The first is Candice LeGros. Candice LeGros has been working with the Milwaukee County Department of Health and Human Services and the Aging and Disability Resource Center for the past 5 years as one of their dementia care specialists. Prior to working as a dementia care specialist, she coordinated an inpatient delirium prevention program at Aurora Advocate St. Luke's Medical Center. She has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in social work. She is an advanced practice licensed social worker and has a dementia specialist designation certificate from the University of Oshkosh. Candice has a passion for serving older adults and working with people who have dementia and their families and caregivers. Our second presenter is Ellen Taylor, who is also a dementia care specialist. She works with the Aging and Disability Resource Center of Dane County. Ellen provides person-centered consultations for families regarding dementia and education programs on brain health and dementia in the community. In addition, she strives to make Dane County more dementia-friendly, a better place to live and thrive. After graduating with a degree from Lawrence University, she completed graduate studies in counseling psychology at the University of San Francisco and positive psychology at Arizona State University. In addition, she has a varied background in elder law, disability services, adult skills training, and case management. She is passionate about supporting people living with dementia and their caregivers. Now it's my distinct pleasure to be able to turn the webinar over to Candice and Ellen.
Thank you, Jody, for that nice warm welcome. I'm going to be presenting my sections with my camera off because whenever I do a virtual presentation and I share my camera, I always feel like I'm looking at myself. So I am going to control my own distractions and keep my camera off for my section. But thank you everybody for joining us. You're going to spend a little bit of time with us learning about the Boost Your Brain and Memory program. We're going to go over just kind of like the basics of the program, the content, the highlights in each of the weekly sessions, and just share some of our experiences with facilitating this program. And then at the end, we will go over how you can get connected to the program. So next slide, please, Jody. Okay, so this is actually the institute that houses the Boost Your Brain and Memory program. So it's called Mather Institute. It's actually based out of Illinois in the Evanston area. So they help distribute the Boost Your Brain and Memory program. I have a link to their website right there as well. So just a little bit of background on Mather Institute. It's a very unique not-for-profit organization that was founded in 1999, and they are dedicated to enhancing the lives of older adults through evidence-based research, collaborative studies, to actually create new ways for people to age well. That's kind of their whole focus, is helping people to kind of live healthier lives and age well. They share important information and innovations to help guide senior living industry. They also provide free information on research and innovation, senior living, wellness, resilience, and perceptions on aging, and actually challenging perceptions on aging. Mather was founded by Alonzo Mather, who was a self-described entrepreneur and humanitarian. Mather has a long history of serving older adults. Alonzo actually funded one of the first continuing care retirement communities in the nation. And Mather is actually comprised of 3 different service areas, kind of service focuses, including senior living residents, community-based initiatives, and then Mather Institute. Next slide. Okay, so the focus of the Boost Your Brain and Memory program. So it's a really cool, unique program. It's kind of a multifaceted, evidence-based brain health program that goes beyond simple brain games. This program really focuses on a variety of lifestyle factors that impact brain health and on memory strategies that participants can implement into their daily lives. So this program really offers a unique kind of whole person approach to brain fitness. So people who participate in the program learn different practices that can help them live healthier lives, lifestyles, remember things better, be more organized, pay closer attention, and regulate their emotions. So we really spend a lot of time on kind of focusing how people can have healthier brains, have a better memory, and kind of teaching them different strategies that they can do to achieve those goals. Next slide. Okay, so these are just some basics about the Boost Your Brain and Memory program. So it is typically an 8-week program. We meet once a week for an hour to an hour and a half, kind of depending on your class size. Group size recommendation is 6 to 8 participants, but you can absolutely have more in a class. Ellen and I both have had more people participate in classes, and the classes are fantastic and great. The program is adaptable for in-person and virtual, which is wonderful. So you kind of have that flexibility to do like a virtual class or do an in-person one. So that is wonderful. Each participant receive a participant program workbook. So each person gets their own workbook that they will bring with them each week to class, and it's theirs to keep. And then these are the different focus areas of brain health that we focus on. So there's 6 different areas. So there's physical activity, emotional health, intellectual activity, nutrition, spiritual activity, and social engagement. Next slide. Okay, so these are the basic program materials that you would need to facilitate the program. So of course you would need your instructor guide that kind of guides you through how to host each of the weekly sessions. So it's pretty scripted. It really is good at walking you through each step of what you're supposed to do for each of the weekly sessions. Again, each participant gets their own workbook that's theirs to keep, bring with them each week to class. Pens, a computer projector, or a smart TV just for a way to show the videos. This program is really centered around the content that is shown in the video. So of course you want to have a good way to share that with your program participants. If you're hosting a in-person group, you just want to make sure you have a nice quiet room with tables and chairs for participants. Or if you're doing a virtual program, you just want to utilize a virtual meeting space like Teams, Zoom, etc., something like that. So it's a pretty low need program. You don't need a whole lot to be able to facilitate the program, which is a benefit. Really nice. Next slide. Okay, so this is how each of the weekly sessions typically run. The first session and session 8 are a little bit different, but this is how they typically run. So we always start the weekly session with a check-in. So we really want to encourage participants to be actively involved in these discussions, really sharing their experience, sharing their successes, their challenges, and moving forward with their goals, just kind of checking in and seeing how they're doing, kind of absorbing all of the information that they're learning in class, and then how are they applying it to their goals that they're setting. We also always do a review of the previous session's content. So we'll go over key points, answer any questions anybody has regarding any of the previous memory session topics and content. We really want to make sure participants, retain what they're learning in class. So we always offer that time to kind of review anything that they're not really understanding, go over key concepts again, the key points that they learned in the prior weekly session. So just really giving them that space and that time to review. And then we will go into the video presentation. So the video presentation is really meant to kind of convey research and information related to each dimension of wellness and brain health. So typically we show about 2 to 3 videos per class, and they can range in time from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. So each video is a little bit different with terms of length, but that's where a lot of the program information is shared. It's shared through these video presentations. Next, we will go into discussions. So after each of the videos that we show in class, we will do like, a short discussion as a group. So I will ask like prompting discussion questions just to kind of get the group talking, or we might even, go into like an activity to kind of reinforce those key points that they're learning in class. So actually do like a hands-on or a group activity together. Then we will actually go over a memory strategy tip. So of course, in addition to focusing on the impact of, lifestyle behaviors on the brain, this program really offers practical strategies to improve memory. So these memory strategies are included to both kind of enhance current memory function and also to serve as a source of like brain health exercise. So it's really nice little like tips and tricks that people can do to actually have a better memory in the meantime while they're kind of going through the class. And then the last thing we'll do is we will go over goal setting and do a recap. So at the end of each of the weekly sessions, of course, excluding session 1 and 8, each participant will really be encouraged to set one short-term and one short-term and one long-term goal for themselves in relation to that area of brain health that we covered that week. I will typically go over like a couple of examples of short-term and long-term goals just to kind of give participants, some ideas, thinking about what they want to commit to for their own, goal for brain health. So like, for example, for the physical activity weekly session, they would set one short-term and one long-term goal in relation to physical activity. So that's kind of how the goal setting works. I typically like to give them time to kind of think about their goals. And if anybody wants to share what their goals that they set for themselves were, I allow them that time to do it at the next weekly session check-in, just in case anybody wanted to share what goals they're setting and how they're doing. Next slide. Okay, so just really quick, these are some potential workshop locations that Ellen and I have actually hosted our sessions at. So, again, for that physical space, all you need is a way to kind of, share the video. So whether it's a smart TV or projector, tables and chairs. I've also gotten feedback from my in-person groups that they really like sitting in kind of like a semicircle instead of like a classroom layout. So even when I like set up my room in a classroom, we end up moving tables and chairs so people can kind of see each other when they're doing their discussion questions or, talking as a group, and then they can also see the videos. But these are some examples. So of course, like health departments are great locations to host this workshop. Local libraries, senior centers are great because you really have a captive audience at the senior centers. I've also done them at senior apartment complexes as long as they have like a nice like meeting space or community room that I'm able to borrow and kind of reserve for that time. Those are great potential locations. And of course, virtual. I always try to offer at least one virtual class per year for people to join if they can't make the in-person ones. So that's always wonderful. Next slide. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Ellen.
Great. Sorry, I'm just futzing with my phone a little bit. I hope you can see me. So
we can. You look good.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Candice. And thank you for Jody for having us here today. So each session looks pretty similar, just the topic is going to vary from week to week. And what's nice is that each week has a dedicated topic. But the first session and last session are a little bit different. So for session 1, it is an introduction. So you go over the concept of how the class is going to run, the organization of the class and the workbook and things like that. But it really introduces first the concept of cognitive reserve, which is a theory that explains how lifestyle changes can help you maintain brain health. And that's the basis for every topic, and that comes up frequently. It explains why some people can have Alzheimer's pathology in their brains and just not show any signs. It introduces brain healthy lifestyle behaviors like physical activity that can help grow new cells and connections, and that amount to reserve in the brain. And so each topic will have an activity. And for the activity, the first one is taking stock. In this activity, participants are asked to take stock of what they're currently doing. They're probably doing more than they think they are for their brain health. And And then what would they like to accomplish? What are those goals that they have? Or what are some of those biggest challenges that they have in improving their brain health? And then we talk about goal setting and we introduce how do you set a goal? How do you make a goal realistic, measurable, time specific, attainable? And you want to avoid vague goals because they're really difficult to achieve. So we're walking through how do you set those goals? All right, next slide, please.
So are we going to show the video now?
I was
or
just
is it-
gonna
Oh,
say,
is
like,
it
did you wanna
working?
show? It is.
Oh,
We
perfect.
tested
Yes.
it.
Now would be the time.
Okay, we
So
are giving it a try.
Okay.
Oops. All right, we're going to get it back to the beginning.
Welcome to Mather Lifeways Institute on Aging's Boost Your Brain and Memory. In this program, we're going to talk about your brain and why researchers now believe that there is a lot that you can do to reduce your risk for dementia and improve your memory, regardless of your age. As you'll learn, there are changes that you can make in a number of areas of your life that can improve your brain fitness. To get started, today we'll talk about the theory of cognitive reserve, brain plasticity, and peak performance. Many people think that dementia is a normal part of the aging process, and that losing one's memory is just part of getting older. Some cognitive skills, such as reaction time and our ability to access words, like when something is on the tip of your tongue but you can't quite remember it, do decline naturally with age. However, dementia is a decline in cognitive ability beyond the normal aging process, most likely due to disease or injury. If your mother or grandfather has dementia, will you have it too? Not necessarily. Brain research is showing that the way people live their lives seems to account for as much or more of the risk for dementia than family history and genes. There is a less common early onset Alzheimer's, which occurs before age 65 and has a much stronger genetic component. However, genes seem to only account for about 30% of the risk for the typical late onset form of Alzheimer's disease. A lot of other things make up that other 70%. Some of those things we can't control, such as environmental toxins. But within that 70% area, there are a lot of things we can control, such as the extent to which we participate in brain-healthy behaviors, like physical and intellectual activity. This information is leading some doctors and scientists to start thinking of dementia as a preventable disease, similar to the way we think of heart disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes. People often ask, what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? Before we get too far, we should clarify that Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. Dementia describes the observable symptoms of a brain disease or injury. Dementia is an umbrella term used to describe any type of stable decline in cognitive abilities that is severe enough to interrupt a person's ability to function independently. Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia. Alzheimer's is a disease process, a medical condition that causes the cognitive changes that produce dementia. However, there are many other medical conditions that cause dementia as well. The second most common disease that causes dementia is what we call cerebrovascular disease, which causes vascular dementia. This includes any type of injury to the brain caused by a problem with the brain's blood supply, most notably a stroke. There are varying degrees of strokes, however. You may have heard of TIAs, or transient ischemic attacks, or mini-strokes. The stroke process can also occur without any identifiable symptoms, causing what we call silent strokes. You will learn more about these in the next session. The other causes of dementia are far less common. These include head injuries, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, Pick's disease, HIV, and the human form of mad cow disease. Substance abuse and environmental toxins can also cause dementia. It's important to note that if you have one of these conditions, that does not mean that you will develop dementia. We are also learning that most people who develop dementia tend to have more than one type of risk factor. These risk factors can interact with one another to increase your overall risk for dementia.
I take it that was the end.
It looks like it.
Okay, perfect. I will bring back the PowerPoint back up.
Oh, great. So that's, oh, thanks. So that's a great example of one of the videos that they show, and there are, each video is kind of broken down into a different subtopic, and they're easy to follow, and they are well received by participants, at least in my experience. Moving on to session 2, this is where we kind of start digging into the actual, nuts and bolts of the program. So we start with physical activity and the benefits of physical activity, such as balance and flexibility, endurance and cardio, and strength building activities. We learn about white dots and what those do to the brain. And so it goes into a little bit more depth than what you saw in session 1. We learn about the FIT principle, which is how you would gauge the type of activity you have, looking at frequency, intensity, time, and type. So all of those factors go into what the actual physical activity does for the brain. And then we do a physical activity. So some of the options would be taking the group for a walk around the block or around the building, showing a chair exercise video, like a chair aerobics, and having the participants follow along and do the activity, or using the in-class activities that are in the participant handbook. And so what we're doing is discussing ways and strategies to increase physical activity throughout the day, and then sharing resources in the local community. I love gauging not only from what recommendations are in the book or the handbook, but also asking the participants, what do they do and what's available in their community? And sometimes, you learn about activities that you weren't previously aware of. And then the memory strategy that you have in this session is on tips for improving attention, such as being more aware, doing only one thing at a time versus multitasking, and getting enough rest. Next slide.
Ellen, there's a question in the chat. They wanted to know what the white dots are.
Oh, those are accumulations that build up in the brain, and they can also interfere with how communication is transported among the cells. So it's not amyloid, it's not a protein, it's a different type of buildup. But it has similar characteristics to how amyloid would build up in the brain and interact with communication.
Ellen, can I expand? Ellen, can I
Yes,
expand on the
please.
white
Go
dots
ahead.
a little bit? Yeah, so I like to always kind of like share what they kind of go over in like the video in terms of what white dots are. So that term like white dots is used in the way that the vascular related damage that Ellen was talking about in the brain and how it actually shows up like on an MRI. So like in a healthy brain, the bundles of connective nerves throughout the brain actually show up as black on an MRI. So when these tracks are damaged, they actually show up as white on an MRI. So I just kind of wanted to expand on what Ellen was talking about. So I hope that clarifies what white dots are.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, So then we move on to session 3, which is emotional health, and talks about stress and the effect of stress and what that effect looks like in the brain, both in a short-term and a long-term stress. It also talks about the difference between good and bad stress, because not all stress is bad for our brain. And humans are unique in that we can activate the brain's relaxation center in response to our thoughts, which is unique among all mammals. And so this really leads to a great discussion about the intricacies of not only what stress does, such as, the buildup of cortisol, the stress hormone, and what that does to brain cells, but also how do you harness that good stress, and then how do you use relaxation to help bring yourself back down into a non-stressful situation. And a lot of caregivers, of course, are living with daily stress, and all of us have stress in our lives. So it's a matter of understanding what that's doing and then ways that we can bring that back down. So we are also looking at our activity, which is the first time we introduce meditation. Meditation is brought up multiple times throughout the program. But in this activity, we use a guided meditation that focuses really on paying attention to our breathing. And so it's a good way to introduce meditation to those people who have not tried to meditate before. The memory strategy that they use during this session is called the memory palace. It's also known as the Roman method of loci, which is a method implemented to memorize information. And how you do that is you conjure up vivid mental images, often using humor or something that's really kind of ridiculous. And it's more memorable if you do that. And the method strengthens visual memory, and it bulks up the pathways in the frontal lobe. So over time, by using this strategy, it really does help with visual memory. And it's an easy way to memorize things such as a shopping list. Participants tell me that this is their favorite memory strategy that we use throughout the course. All right, next slide, please. So session 4 talks about intellectual activity. And I always tell people it is not just crossword puzzles because we really talk about a lot of different options in this session. We really delve more into how the brain is plastic and it can change over time, and that we can grow new brain cells throughout the lifespan. And so we look at Hebb's law, which states that cells that fire together wire together. And what this means is that the more you practice a skill, the more your brain creates these connections, or how it wires together, and it makes the brain stronger and more resistant to disease. It also helps us with learning something new. The more we practice, the easier it becomes. Kind of like riding a bike, or you learned as a child and maybe you haven't ridden a bike for 30 years. But when you get back on that bike, some of it's going to feel familiar, and the more you practice, the easier it gets. They also talk about types of intellectual activities, specifically in the frontal cortex. That area of the brain you're using logic, problem solving, and puzzles are really primary activities for strengthening the frontal cortex. For the temporal cortex, it's looking at memory games and reading. In the parietal cortex, that's where your body awareness is. So activities such as meditation, Tai Chi, and yoga can be really instrumental. And then in the visual cortex, this is where we just really want to make sure that vision is optimal. So having regular vision exams so that we can be more connected with our visual experiences. The study that they talk about in this session is called the active study. And what that does is it talks about how brain training can help build up brain reserve by investing in different types of intellectual activities. So it's the idea of cross-training your brain. The more different types of activities you do and using different areas of your brain, such as the frontal cortex or the temporal cortex, that will strengthen your brain in different ways. And hopefully, buffer some of those effects of dementia. And then the activity that they're doing in this session is called mindful memory. And what this is, it's giving participants a chance to practice giving something their full attention. So we use an orange, a piece of fruit, and we really use our senses to help understand how it connects to each of our senses. So how the smell of the orange would impact our brain, and the sight and the touch and the smell and all of those things. And then in the memory strategy, what we're doing with this one is it's just strategies on how to better organize your space. So how to, create zones where you would keep your keys and things like that. All right, next slide, please. Session 5, we go into a discussion about nutrition. And this is really an overview of brain healthy foods. We're looking at antioxidants and omega-3s and really how those impact our brain health. So the activity options with this session are kind of varied. You could do a demonstration if you have access to a kitchen, where you could do a demonstration of making a smoothie or putting fruit into water, such as lemon or lime. But then you could also show a healthy cooking video. So if you don't have access to a kitchen, that's a great way to show how to make a smoothie, for instance. We also talk at length about the Mediterranean diet during this session and the concept of brain healthy foods. And there are, in their workbook, there are more information on this topic as well. And then the memory strategy, it's called Link It. And in this strategy, what you're having participants do is to find ways to have information stick. So by linking it with something that has an emotion to it, or something you already know, or using your senses to better associate the information with what you're trying to remember. All right, next slide, please. In session 6, we talk about spiritual activity, and this could incorporate mindfulness, types of meditation, and then other spiritual and religious practices. So it really covers a great deal of types of activities. It differentiates between all the different types and then examples of what that looks like. So for instance, there could be mindfulness or a sitting meditation, a visualization, walking meditation, loving kindness meditation, and another option that they bring up is centering prayer meditation. And so they talk about what each of those mean and examples of what that looks like using the video. The activity of this one is really again, a very popular activity of the session, and it's a gratitude journal. It's based on the 3 good things from Martin Seligman, a psychologist, who asks participants to think about 3 good things that happened over the past 24 hours. And not only are they looking at those things, but why did they have such an impact on the person? So there's a grid activity that somebody can use to answer these questions. And really, the goal is to be able to replicate the good feelings again. So if, let's say, a friend brought takeout, and they know that the individual really likes Chinese food, and their friend brought them some Chinese food. Well, why did it make the person feel good? Was it because they were thinking and missing their friend, or because they really were hungry? And what is it that made the person feel so good? So that you can understand why that happened, so you can replicate it again in the future. The recommendation for this practice is to continue daily for about 6 months to see the greatest cognitive benefit. So we're introducing this activity and then suggesting that the participants continue on. Next slide, please. With session 7, we talk about social engagement. And so we're looking at studying this through observational studies in which participants are followed over time to observe cognitive effects. Early declines in cognitive function may be a cause for people to disengage, and this could be an early marker of brain disease such as Alzheimer's. So really understanding what are some of those activities and what are the benefits of being social. We know it keeps us happy, it helps lower stress and improves our mood, but everybody has different levels of social engagement needs. And so it's really understanding why it is so important in this session. And then the activity has us try to get to know somebody new. So what you would do is sit by somebody that you are not already familiar with. And there are some get to know you questions that you would ask of the other person, such as where did you grow up, and some other fun questions. And the idea is to help somebody feel a little bit more comfortable talking to a stranger or somebody they don't know very well. And the memory strategy in this one is a rehearsal. So it's you just learn various types of rehearsal techniques for the session. All right, so the last session, so session 8, is our summary. And what this is really a recap of all the previous sessions. And then it talks about setting goals and how do you change that if the goals aren't working, and understanding that not everything is going to work great. And maybe you need to rethink things and how to really understand setback and how do you work through that. The final activity leads participants through an exercise on self-compassion. It's modeled after the loving kindness meditation and is adapted from a book titled The 4-Day Win by Martha Beck, PhD. All right, next slide. So both Candice and I have had multiple sessions in both Dane County and then throughout Milwaukee County. We both started the program the same year, interestingly enough. In Dane County, we've completed 8 workshops. We've had 162 total participants. The overall ratings that come back on our surveys are very good. People are finding that the content is valuable and they're recommending this workshop to others. I personally have had people sign up for the workshop more than once because they find that there's so much content that it's really hard to learn everything the first time you go through the program. And all of them have expressed an understanding of improvement in their knowledge of brain health and dementia. So we're just seeing lots of positive feedback from this program. And Candice, I'll turn this over to you to talk about Milwaukee County.
Ellen. So yeah, it's really funny that we started the program at the same time, both in 2022. So I have had, I've hosted 20 total workshops since 2022. I've had 158 total participants. The overall rating for the workshops, so excellent or very good, 95%. So really wonderful feedback from participants saying that they really enjoyed it. They felt like it was worthwhile. They learned something. They really enjoyed it. 98% of all the participants say that they would recommend this workshop to others to take, which is always wonderful to hear, because kind of that word of mouth can be the best way to get other people and new participants into your workshop. So it's always wonderful to hear that people would recommend a friend or a family member take it as well. And then one of my other survey questions that I always do at the end of the program is I ask if they feel like they're in better control of their health from when they first started the program, and 95% feel like they're in better control of their health at the end of the program, which is just really wonderful feedback.
Ellen and
Oh.
Candice, there is a question in the chat. It asks if the program's available online. I do believe you each mentioned a virtual option. How many of your workshops have been virtual?
So I have hosted at least one a year virtually. There are other people who do facilitate the program as well in my county. I have the I think he's the health and wellness coordinator with the senior centers. He helps me host workshops, and he's held some in person and virtual. So they are available virtually and online. You would just have to kind of get connected to your local ADRC just to find out more. But I will be going over that nearish the end of the presentation. So hold on one second.
In Dane County, we have been only having in-person sessions, but we are open to a virtual option in the future.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
for me, I like to do both. I like to do in-person and virtual just to give people kind of both options, whether they're not able to attend in person, they have that virtual option too. And sometimes it works better for people's schedules, but everyone's different. I just like to always offer both options. So Ellen and I thought it would be like a kind of a fun thing to do, to kind of do a pros and cons list for the program. So if you were, potentially a professional thinking about like, well, is this a program that I would like to facilitate or I would like to bring to my community? That I like doing pros and cons lists, so we did one together. So some pros for this program: it is our most requested program. Ellen and I both agreed, like, this is the thing that people request over anything else, any other workshop, any other, presentation. This is the thing that is requested the most by the community. So it's clear that this is information that people in the community are looking for and they want, and it's valuable. So most requested program by far. It's also a very easy program to facilitate, which is greatly appreciated if you're a professional that does multiple things, hosts multiple workshops, and does all these things. This is a really nice, like, easy program to be a facilitator for. They really kind of provide everything to you kind of on a silver platter, knowing exactly what you're supposed to do. Ask this question, now show this video, now do this activity, boom, boom, boom. So the foundation of it is really nice. You can always adapt and change and add things if you would like to make it a more personalized, flow of what you like, but it's put together really, really well and simple, and it's easy to follow. It also provides that kind of proactive view to brain health. So kind of putting the power in people's hands. These are the things that you can do to actually have a healthier brain, have a better memory. So teaching them that it's not set in stone. You're not, there's not anything that you just can't do to prevent dementia. There's lots of things that you actually can do. So people kind of appreciate that it's more positive and a proactive view. And also a cool thing that has happened in almost every single, I think, workshop I've hosted, and I know Ellen said the same thing, that a lot of friendships are formed. So, 8 weeks is a long time. You get to kind of know the people who are in the class, and they get to know each other, and they actually form friendships. I actually had a class that I was hosting where at the last session they said, well, can we keep meeting? And I'm like, you guys can absolutely keep meeting. I am done. Like the program is over, but you guys can absolutely continue to meet. And I think they actually did, which is wonderful. It also provides like a connection to other community resources and programs. So kind of like Ellen went over in her section, that we do spend some time kind of talking about like other resources and programs that people can get connected to for their health and well-being, that they might have not been aware of. So they're able to kind of learn more about what's around them and how they can get connected to it. There's also no yearly program fee, which is nice. You kind of purchase the program and that's it. You don't have to do or budget for any yearly fee, which is wonderful. There's also no required data reporting to Mather Institute, so you don't have to do any particular type of like pre or post survey. You can if you want to. I think Ellen and I both do, but that's just like an extra thing that we decided that we wanted to do that we thought was valuable, but you're not required to do it. And then going over to the cons list. So Ellen, please correct me if I am wrong, but I think the program was developed in 2014. Is that right?
I think that's right.
I think that's right too. I was trying to like confirm that the other day. I'm pretty sure it's 2014. So as you would think, a program that was developed in 2014, some of the program information is like a tad outdated. I'm just kind of more thinking of like some of the information provided in the nutrition section. Some of that is a little outdated. So you kind of have to say, like, take this with a grain of salt. This is, this was developed in 2014, but here are some like updated informations about like, recommended diets or how much alcohol to drink or not to drink any alcohol at all. So you can kind of like add in those more current updates on your own. Another con, there is no formal training for the program. So there's no formal facilitator training by Mather. The weekly sessions can also end a little bit early if the participants aren't really engaging in some of like the time for like discussion and questions. So that's one thing that I've noticed, that, it can end a little bit early if participation from the group is a little bit low. There are also no handouts for the content covered in the videos. And I think that has been my biggest critique from my program participants, is they really would like a handout for the information and the content covered in the videos. I've had to go back, re-show videos and we say what they're, you know, telling participants in the videos, because they're trying so hard to like write everything down, that they're trying to gather all that information. So that's something that would be nice to add, is having like a little, you know, handout for that content for the videos. And also the participant workbook, it does have limited information covered in the sessions. And I do think that's intentional, because you know, they want people to come to class to kind of learn additional information from the class and just not have everything in the workbook. That way they maybe wouldn't come to class. But it would be nice to, you know, have some sections in the workbook for notes, or have a little bit more information that's covered in the video in the workbook. So that is a critique from participants.
You mentioned that there's no program fee. Is there a fee for the participant workbooks?
So I will go over that in just a second. So it's like you purchase the program. So you're basically purchasing like the program materials and you get them. So however your organization wants to pay for like printing the workbooks, that's just an additional cost that you would maybe have to figure out, but you don't have to like purchase the workbooks from Mather. You would just print them on your own.
Thank you.
Next slide. Okay, so promoting the program. So of course, these are strategies that Ellen and I have done to kind of like help get the word out there that we're hosting a program, to let the community know so that they're able to sign up and register for the program. So we have done like email blasts to like relevant community partners and organizations like senior living apartments, senior centers, the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Institute, the Alzheimer's Association, ERA Senior Network. So you're kind of create your little list of like, you know, relevant and appropriate other organizations and community places that would want to know that this is going on, so they can help distribute that information that this class is going on. We've also posted it on our ADRC website, including it in ADRC like newsletters. Like in Milwaukee County, I make sure it's in our ADRC resource report, and I do a quarterly dementia-friendly Milwaukee County newsletter, so I make sure I include it in there. Social media posts, so like doing a Facebook post or posting it on Nextdoor. You can also include it in like local newspapers and journals. So if there's like a local community like resource guide or activity guide through like the rec department or a little like community magazine, putting it in there is also a really great way to get the word out. Also requesting that if you're doing it at like a host site, so if you're doing it at like a senior center or a senior living community, really encouraging the person that you're kind of coordinating it with to help promote the class to their connections, so to their residents, of people who live there or people who come to their senior center. So kind of, you know, getting that help to let people know that, hey, this is coming, you know, to this location, you should sign up. So really requesting that they help you with that promotion. Also sharing it at upcoming like workshops or outreach events, at community presentations or events. So I'll work really closely with like our outreach team here at Milwaukee County to make sure I give them those flyers ahead of time so they can take it to all the different like outreach events that they're going to in the community. And then one of the most powerful ones too is the word of mouth. So especially from past participants, that's how we've gotten a lot of our you know, future participants to take the class, is just, oh, like so-and-so in my building took it and I wanted to sign up for it, or my neighbor took it and I wanted to take it. So that word of mouth is really, really powerful with this program. Next slide. Okay, so this is how you can get connected to the program. So if you would like to participate in the Booster Brain and Memory program, the first place that you want to start is getting connected to your local ADRC in your county. That's Aging and Disability Resource Center, and see if they're offering that program in your county first and start there. If they're not, the dementia care specialist there will probably get you connected to another DCS who is offering it. So that would be the first place I would go to see, you know, nearby local program offerings. And then if you want to become a facilitator for the Booster Brain and Memory program, what you would do is you would contact Mather Institute to request to purchase the program. And what they require is, well, this was back in 2022, so it might have changed, but back in 2022, the donation cost was $250. So you're basically making a donation, and then they provide you with a link to like a Google Drive, and then you would download all of like the program material. So it's basically like a program kit, and you would just download and save all of the materials. So you would save all of the videos, the facilitator guide, the participant workbooks, reference lists. So everything that you would need to facilitate the program, it's all there in digital form, and you would just download it yourself. So then when you're hosting the program, you would just need, to print participant workbooks for everybody who's joining the class. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, and then these are just some other nice resources that are provided by Mather Institute. So they provide a lot of free downloadable handouts on brain health. So they have a couple different versions, like a shorter one that's a 7 new brainy bits handout, and a 20 beefy brainy bits handout, and it just kind of goes over that good information on what you could do to protect your brain health, like don't smoke, and they're eating lots of food that has antioxidants in it and stuff like that. And another cool thing that they do is they actually offer virtual classes as well. So you can actually go to their website, and they offer all of these different types of online classes. So they do mindfulness and brain health, aromatherapy, creative arts and art making, movement and dance. So they actually provide a lot of other free, wonderful resources through Mather Institute. And I did see a question in the chat. Is it only available in English? Yep, I'm only aware that it's only available in English, so I don't think it's been translated into any other languages. Good question. And that's it.
So
Does anybody have any questions?
So at this time, I would like to formally stop the recording so we can open up for Q&A. But I do want to acknowledge a very efficient, effective presentation by you, Candice and Ellen. Thank you very much. So with that, I will stop the recording.
Was there any other questions that anybody wanted to ask about the Booster Brain and Memory program? Any questions for me or Ellen?